Hello, this is Adrian Baker from Agile Horizons, and I want to talk to you today about my top 3 tips on how to pass your PSM1 exam first time. First of all, what is PSM1? Well, it is Professional Scrum Master certification offered by scrum.org, and it is perhaps one of the most well-respected certifications for Scrum Masters worldwide. If you have this on your CV, basically says you know what you're talking about in terms of Scrum. Secondly, it is a certification for life. What this means is there's no expiration date, there's no renewal fees. Once you have it, it's yours forever. And then lastly, it has been decoupled from training courses. And what that means is that if you want to do a training course to prepare for the exam, you can. Or if you want to rely on self-study, you also can. Or, of course, you can do some sort of mixture of the two approaches, which is often very popular. For these reasons, we at Agile Horizons are very happy to support the PSM1 exam. And today, as I say, I will give you my top 3 tips for passing it on to tip number 1. So here is tip number 1, and this one is really important for experienced Scrum Masters and Agile practitioners. The problem is there is sometimes something of a discrepancy between Scrum, the way it's practiced in the industry, and Scrum, the way it's laid out in the Scrum Guide. And this can cause a big problem, of course, in the exam. There are many examples of this, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to give you one example of where this can be a problem. So we have here a question, very common sort of question that may come up on the exam. Who decides which backlog items go into the sprint? As we know, at the start of each sprint, there is a sprint planning meeting, and at the end of it, we come out with a list of items that we're going to take into the next sprint. And the question is, who is the decision maker here? When I ask this question to Agile practitioners, the most common answer I get is the product owner. They say, well, the PO owns the backlog, they understand the priorities, etc. And some people may say that it is the Scrum Master, and some people may think it's a combination of the two. In fact, all 3 of these answers are incorrect, and it is, in fact, the developers who are the decision makers. Now, obviously, the developers are not making these decisions in isolation. They're talking to the PO, and as we've said, the PO understands the risks, the priorities, dependencies, and so on. But ultimately, it is the developers, the people who are going to do the work, who decide what goes into the next sprint. And over here on the right, we have a direct quote from the Scrum Guide. Through discussion with product owner, the developers select items from the product backlog to include in the current sprint. So there we are. It's pretty simple, pretty clear here. But of course, this sort of question can really trip people up who have some knowledge and some experience of doing Scrum in the industry. Tip 2 is good old-fashioned memorization learning, sometimes called rote learning. Now, you're going to do yourself a big favor in the exam if you spend a little time memorizing the key facts in the Scrum Guide. We all know in the Scrum Guide there are 3 Scrum pillars, 5 Scrum values, 3 Scrum roles, the Scrum events, and many other things that are really, really worth memorizing. And if you do this, you will save a lot of time in the exam, and also you will minimize the risk of taking time and running over your allotted time. So how are you going to learn these things? Repetition works. Say them out loud every day for a few days. Write them down 10 times a day. Make an acronym out of them, can also be useful. Whatever it takes, you will do yourself a lot of favors by learning these key facts. And in the next slide, we'll see an example of why this can be so important. This is a typical question that can come up in the exam. Which of the following are Scrum values? And the responses are openness, feedback, courage, and respect. Now, all of these seem perfectly reasonable. They are words, concepts that come up in Agile and in Scrum quite a lot. So you might be tempted to check all of the 4 boxes. That would not be the correct answer, because if you have done your memorization, you will know in an instant that feedback is not one of the official Scrum values. It's actually a value from elsewhere in the Agile world. So, as I say, do yourself a favor, do some memorization. It will save you a lot of time and help you to get questions like this right very quickly. Tip number 3 is around time management. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have some metrics lifted directly from the scrum.org website. So for your PSM1 exam, passing score is 85%, time limit is 60 minutes, and the number of questions is 80. So that's a lot of questions to do in just 1 hour. And if you do the calculation, you will find that that is 45 seconds per question. And over on the right hand side of the slide, that is option 1, just to time yourself according to 45 seconds per question. I'm not wild about this option because if you overrun, for example, one question, you could end up not giving yourself enough time to answer all the questions in the paper. So I prefer option 2, which is to allow yourself 30 seconds per question. So we're looking at answering 2 questions per minute. If you do it this way, you will get 20 minutes at the end to look through your paper. You also have a buffer, so if you do overrun, you're not going to run out of time and should still be able to answer all the questions. The way this works is if you have a question that you're not sure about, you can flag it and then go back to it later. And that's a very popular way of doing this. Lastly, just to say that this is an open book exam. What that means is you can consult material content such as the Scrum Guide, but when you're up against a clock like this, you really don't have time. So I think if you're going to try and consult the Scrum Guide, you're setting yourself up for failure. And as we've said earlier, it's a great idea just to memorize this stuff so you don't have to think about it in the exam. That's my 3rd tip, time management. So that's it. Those are my top 3 tips for passing your PSM1 exam. If you like what you've heard and would like some more, go over to agilehorizons.com, where we have several courses aimed at getting you through your PSM1 exam. We have a full 2-day course which covers the full syllabus, also has real life scenarios, question and answer, quizzes, exam prep, and so on. We have a half-day course, crash course if you like, and we also have a 1-hour exam prep, which is a little bit like what we've been doing here on this video, but obviously we have a bit more time for more examples and to go into a bit more depth. That's all from me, Adrian Baker, Agile Horizons. Whatever method you choose to pass your PSM1 exam, I just want to wish you good luck.